Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, let me start off by saying thank you very much. Yesterday's video, in case you didn't see it, I asked you all to give it a thumbs up, and that if we reached 5,000 likes on that video within 48 hours, that I was going to donate $500 to the Fairbanks RCPC. And ladies and gentlemen, I think it took about 12 hours and there were 5,000 likes on that video. So I am a man of my word. So there will be a short video coming out pretty soon, or I may integrate it into another video where I will be going over to RCPC. I just called Wendy over there. I'm waiting for her to call me back and donating $500 just like I told you. But let's talk about this video. And many of you may be asking, well, AP, a lot of times when you put news out or put actionable intel out, it's a day or two old. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I really don't like to jump onto things right away because a lot of times the news changes a little bit within hours. So I like to just let it stew for a little while. There was a piece of news that I saw here not too long ago about some kind of an exchange, military exchange between Marines and FEMA in Hawaii, you know, where they're having all those fires. And the longer that you wait, I'm not sure if you've heard about it, where people have lost their lives because of firing back and forth or firing in one direction. You know, pretty much a military operation. But it seems like every hour that passes by, a little bit changes. So that's why I don't like to just jump into something right away. If there was ever some news that I needed to get to you really quick, because I'm like, man, they need to hear this right now, because it's like you need to act now, I will more than likely go live and take it that route because it's that important. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Now, not saying that the stuff that I'm about to cover today is not important. It is important, because even if you don't eat rice, ladies and gentlemen, just the matter of fact, and the WEF agrees that the price of rice is going to skyrocket because there will be a shortage. Why? Because nations are now looking out for their people. It seems like here in the U.S., we're one of the very few nations where we are very generous with our charity, but forget about the people within. Well, there's other countries that are like, you know what? I think we better keep our food here because it looks like things are going to get a little bit sporty going forward. And therefore, global rice crisis worsens as India mulls over new, not the old one that they just did here not too long ago, but new export restrictions, of course, on rice. The restrictions that they have on their exports currently is on non-basmati rice, but it looks like they're going to start to put restrictions on other kinds of rice, such as parboiled rice as well. As India, the world's biggest rice exporter, wrestles with soaring food inflation and the damaging effects of the El Niño weather phenomenon on farmlands, the Prime Minister is mulling over whether to restrict even more exports of the grain that is causing global tightening at an alarming scale. That's not that big of a deal, AP, because here in the U.S. we produce enough rice to feed our entire nation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would agree with you there. However, we have what is a world economy, and it is not just by country. I think it should be by country, but we have what is a world economy. What does that mean to you? The person who consumes rice here in the U.S. and the U.S. makes plenty of rice to feed all of the Americans that is situated here in the U.S. now. Well, what it means is that since we have like a world economy, it means that the price of commodities is worldwide. So if there is a shortage of rice in country A, B, and C, but we have more rice, even though we have more rice than what we need, the price of rice altogether goes up, right? It goes up just like oil. Let's say that we pumped all of the oil that we need for just the United States. Does it mean that the price of oil is going to go down? No, ladies and gentlemen. It just means that we pump all of the oil that we need for the entire United States. That's all that that means. In a way, it's good for national security. The oil will be priced the way that it is priced in the world market. So the world market will dictate the price of oil. Being that we can pump enough oil to satisfy our need here in the U.S. will dictate, in my opinion, our national security, because that means that we should have our SPR, our strategic petroleum reserves filled, which we don't obviously, but that's another story. It would mean that we could continue to produce enough oil for ourselves if the entire rest of the world turned into mayhem, right? So it's great for national security, but the price of oil is not dictated whether we can provide enough oil for our country or not. It's dictated on a world price index. And same thing with rice and other commodities. I probably took that a little too far, but I just want you to understand that only because we grow enough rice, and I do believe that we grow enough rice here in the US to satisfy our needs for rice, it doesn't mean that it's going to be cheaper here. Obviously it's not, because you've seen the price of rice just go up and go up and go up in the last year and a half or two. And here you can take a look at this graph. India is the world's biggest rice exporter, exporting about 40.5% of the rice that is consumed worldwide. That is a huge number. The first round of export restrictions was applied to shipments of, like I mentioned earlier, non-basmati white rice last month. Now the government is considering an export tax on parboiled rice to deter shipments abroad to ensure domestic supplies are ample to prevent a hyperinflationary spike in food prices that would ultimately spark social unrest. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that rice prices have elevated to the highest price in like the last 10 or so years. And if I remember back 10 or so years ago, 11, 12 years, that we had what was called the Arab Spring, I believe it was, I think around 2011. And that was due to the price of food being elevated. I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times from 1,000 different YouTube channels, that there's been research that's been done that states that whenever a family has to spend 40% or more of their income on food, that bad things have to happen. That they tend to go out on the streets and do bad things to tell the government, hey, this is not good. Meanwhile, the latest report on global food prices from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations showed that the Global Food Index, which tracks monthly changes in the international prices of globally traded food commodities, see what I mean? Globally traded food commodities, jumped the most in 18 months. So on top of rice being in danger of not being exported to the amount that it normally is, especially for those real poor countries, not only is rice in danger of getting extremely expensive where those poorer countries can't afford it, but all foods have gone up in the last 18 months at a very high rate, more so than what people's wages have been able to keep up. You have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that your wages will never be able to keep up with inflation. And as I stated earlier, the WEF seems to agree with this. But in a way, if you read through this article, they're kind of like, hey, this is why. And of course, they have to push their narrative. But here on a June 6th of this year article, rice is both a victim and a villain in terms of the climate crisis. And here's why. So rice is a victim because of the climate change, but it's also a villain because it makes climate change occur. You can't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. Each day, more than half of the world sits down to a meal of rice, and that is a fact. Rice is a staple, and many people will suffer once they cannot afford it. If you're a rice eater, just stock up on rice, that's all. It's as easy as that, because it's still available, and it's only going to get more expensive. But we are about to enter a major rice shortage, they say. And we're already seeing prices significantly up in anticipation of demand. With so many people depending on the grain, this creates serious food security issues for some in the world's poorest countries. And we just talked about that. And again, look at this. India is like the biggest rice exporter in the world. They export roughly 21.5 million tons or metric tons. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, in the eyes of the WEF, and probably only in their eyes, well, maybe in the UN's eyes too, IMF, BIS, all those other globalist organizations, rice is the devil. Why? Because imagine that, methane emissions in rice farming. Imagine that CO2 emissions would occur when humans just live. Because farming is done by humans, and we have to live, and we excrete or exhale methane or CO2, right? We actually exhale and excrete both, right? Methane and CO2. And just to show you that this warning has been going out for quite a while, this article is all the way from April. And if I remember correctly, I was covering this topic all the way back in, I think it was December of last year, December or November. Global rice shortages set to be the biggest in 20 years. Now, this was back in April, before India even said that they were going to go ahead and start restricting their exports. And here they say that rice production for 2023 is set to log its largest shortfall in 2 decades, according to Fitch Solutions. Now, what does that mean? That they were talking about this back in April before the problems that we're seeing occur now are occurring. It means, ladies and gentlemen, that you better batten down the hatches. Because even if you're not a rice eater, you have to consider this. People that are no longer able to afford rice, they're going to have to go to something else. What's cheaper than rice? I would probably argue that maybe pasta is maybe a little bit cheaper than rice now, as far as how many calories you can get to the dollars that you pay for it. Maybe pasta is a little cheaper. So whenever something falls out of the price range that someone can afford, they substitute it with something else that's less expensive, that is similar to that thing that they can no longer afford. So rice is predominantly a carbohydrate, whereas pasta is predominantly a carbohydrate as well. Rice now is a lot more expensive and will get more expensive than in the past. And pasta, although it has gotten more expensive, maybe it's a little less cheaper than rice. So anyways, just trying to make the point that whenever something's no longer available, either due because of scarcity or socio-economic status, that something has to be substituted for that. So if you're a rice eater, stock up on rice. But really, ladies and gentlemen, just stock up on everything. Just get prepared. We have a few years of some trying times headed our way. Having said that, I hope that you have a great day. Again, be on the lookout for that video where I will be making that donation to the RCPC of Fairbanks. And thank you very much again, ladies and gentlemen, to all of you that always click on the videos to come and hang out with me for a few minutes every day. God bless every one of you. God bless America. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out.